Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Every day, we'll be back tomorrow with the latest on Damian Lillard. We'll look at the best remaining free agents. So make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube, on your favorite podcast app. All right. So a lot to get to here, David. We're going to kind of just go through this quick. Later on in the week, we're going to do a more in-depth breakdown on what are the new faces can do for the Miami Heat. Thomas Bryant, Josh Richardson.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah. But we'll start with the guys that they lost. Gabe Vincent signs 3 years, $33 million with the Los Angeles Lakers. Max Strus goes to the Cleveland Cavaliers for a deal averaging $16 million annually. Awesome paydays for Gabe and Max. Super happy for them. Way to go get your money. My opinion on this was the Heat obviously were waiting for Damian Lillard. They didn't want to overpay. What they viewed as an overpay for Gabe, they offered Gabe Vincent something around $8 million a year. He said no thanks. He went and got $11 million a year from the Lakers. They knew basically right away that they were not going to be able to reach even mid-level exception, like full MLE for Max. He gets even more than that from Cleveland. Good by them to execute a sign and trade, get an extra second-round pick back in that exchange. But I'll just, again, super happy for happy for Gabe, happy for Max. I thought Miami did the right thing. I actually think those are really good additions for the teams that they went to also.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I look,
shooting for Cleveland, a point guard for the Lakers. Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, but then you signed D'Angelo Russell to like twice that much. Hey man, I know
Russell's like $17 million a year
for Russell.
Yeah, it's like on average.
I mean, you're paying a combined $40 million a year.
I would be very surprised if D'Lo finished that contract in LA. That was just one of those things. Like, let's maintain the salary cap slot. Yeah,
I don't think Gabe finishes that contract in Los Angeles. I certainly.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
I think. In other words, I think they brought in D'Lo to maintain the roster flexibility because if you lose him, you kind of lose that spot.
Look, personally, and again, I think we should take time later on this week to talk about each of these players. Victor Oladipo too. We should mention getting traded to Oklahoma City, and who knows what his future is like. But each of these players contributed
to
Cody Zeller,
along with two future second-round picks to move Oladipo. So the Heat have
Cody Zeller signing in New Orleans as well, and as you and I were talking about before, Omer Yurtseven looks likely to depart as well. And so all these players had their moments. We talked to all of them. They're great guys, great locker room people, great people, period, I think. And they were all contributors this season in one way or another to the good positive vibes in that locker room. And I wish them nothing but the best. But this idea,
no, it's Woj, Justin Holiday, the Nuggets.
Yeah, you got me there on that Woj tweet there. But at the same time, there was no opportunity really for Miami to bring back these players. I think Max in particular.
I was a little surprised that they didn't bring back Gabe Vincent, and then
I thought he would be more open to it.
I thought they were going to go up to $10 million a year. They settled in at $8 million.
For 4 years, that's a pretty hefty contract. But I mean, I understand.
I just thought they were going to try to bring one of them back. I would have to guess that they felt like, look, we can't get into the business of overpaying our undrafted guys because we already did it, and it's hamstrung the roster a little bit. Andy Ellsberg and his whole team have obviously put together projections for what they could be if in the scenario that they do land Damian Lillard and what they are going to be on that second apron. That $8 million versus hypothetically $10 million that came into play. They didn't just happen to come on that number. Like they studied it and they decided that was the most we can offer. And Pat Riley flew out to Santa Barbara to meet with Gabe Vincent and convince him to come back. They wanted him back, but they wanted him back at that number. You can't blame Gabe. Look, nobody expected the Lakers to come out. I think everybody assumed they were just going to re-sign D'Lo. That would be it. They actually end up getting Gabe and then later surprise people again by re-signing D'Lo, to your point. But yes, very, very happy. Gabe Vincent was one of my favorite guys to talk to in that locker room. I'm really going to miss him. I'm going to look forward to when the Lakers come into town and we get to talk to him again. And I'm going to look forward to when Cleveland comes into town and we get a chance to catch up with Max Strus because those guys were always really great. Max Strus a little bit more dry than Gabe Vincent. Gabe a little bit more forthcoming, but both of them very, very fun to talk to. And obviously starters on an NBA Finals team, hugely impactful, hugely important to the team over the last couple of years. Max Strus with the 3-pointer that should have counted in the Eastern Conference Finals in Game 7 last year. Like, we had moments with these guys. They're always going to be important to the Miami Heat. they were a big part of that fourth iteration, to use Pat Riley's words, right? And this is maybe what that meant when he said we're working on this fifth iteration. He probably had an idea that it was very possible that these guys wouldn't be coming back.
Can I add something before we add to the list of players that Miami did add? There was also the sentiment around the league and around NBA Twitter that Miami lost a great deal by losing these two players, and it's not like a knock on either of those two players, but I think Heat fans knew better because again, these players not only did they struggle with inconsistency at various times throughout their careers, they struggled with inconsistency up until the NBA Finals, and they were players thrust into the situation to play more minutes because of injuries to Tyler Herro and everything else like that. But I don't know that Miami really lost mega impactful players.
Can I put it? I'll put it in a different way. I don't think that this forces them to take a step back.
Right.
In losing Gabe and Max. I think they're good players and they were valuable players. But you're right. They were inconsistent players. All regular season long, both of them struggled with their shot. There was a reason. Max Strus's playoff run was very up and down. And he's developed other parts of his game, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And Gabe Vincent, same thing. They're going to be helpful on their new teams, but I don't think that this marks a major step back for the Miami Heat either. Let's talk about the new guys. So they do bring back Kevin Love. Should mention that on the $3.7 million deal. You and I, that was what we talked about on this podcast, or something that we expected. Not surprising at all.
Taking offers from Phoenix, perhaps. At least that was reported.
And you go get the full. He told me point blank, I want to be back here. And that was within 2 weeks of being here. Before going to the NBA Finals. I thought an interesting move bringing Orlando Robinson back on a standard deal. I love that. So now we basically know what the backup center position is going to be. We'll get to Thomas Bryant here in a minute. They add Drew Smith and Jamari Bouye to the two-way contracts. Those are the two guys who I kind of earmarked as getting the two ways next year, part of their developmental pipeline. They were a little bummed to see Drew Smith sign with Brooklyn in the middle of last year because they really like Drew Smith. He obviously finishes the year. His contract expires in Brooklyn. They have a lot of things going on in terms of roster changes, so they don't bring him back. So the Heat get to bring him back. And Jamari Bouye is one of the best players in the G League last year, all G League, first as a rookie. So you bring those guys back. And by the way, you lose Gabe Vincent. Those guys both play guard, right? So those are sort of your next Gabe Vincents in terms of developmental pipeline type deals. So I like them a lot on the two-way. And you bring Jamal Cain back on that third two-way contract this year with the new CBA. Teams get 3 two-way spots as opposed to
is it insurance? Is this insurance if you don't land Dame Lillard? You at least have additional point guards on the roster?
No. This is insurance. This is just two-way contracts. Like if you don't get Damian Lillard, you have to make some other decisions at point guard. You're not starting Drew Smith or Bouye next year.
No, you got Kyle Lowry though. I mean, that's the whole thing. But
yeah, I would still think they need to address, even if they get Lillard and lose Lowry or whatever, like they're gonna have to make some sort of veteran addition in terms of a backup point guard, I would think. But these are good guys. These are like the pipeline guys when you're talking about who's next for Miami's developmental program. But let's talk about Josh Richardson and Thomas Bryant. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Bryant because I think he's a relatively unknown. Big game against the Heat earlier this year. Remember that we covered that from the arena when he was with the Lakers. I'll play Bam in that game, and I remember that was my thought in that recap as we're recording from the arena is like he played bigger and better than Bam in that one particular game, despite the fact that Bam, is as good as he is. And I think maybe it's a little bit of the Wayne Ellington effect where it's like, oh, you show out against us, maybe there's something to it. But I think he's a big body. He's talented on offense. I think he's started to stretch the floor a little bit, and I think he's got potential there. He's been battling a lot of injury over his relatively short career, but he's still young and he's still looking to prove it. I think there's a lot of gaps there defensively. But as far as getting a player, like he might be the most skilled backup center that they've had in quite some time. I can't recall even off the top of my head immediately.
That's interesting.
Right? I mean, I don't know who else it would be. Like
he's inconsistent. I mean, there's a reason why the Lakers traded him to Denver. He did win a championship with the Nuggets, so it's him, Kevin Love, and Kyle Lowry right now in the locker room with rings. Like those are your champions. Nobody else. Udonis Haslem is retired. I like it a lot. He could shoot the 36% career 3-point shooter. I don't think that this is somebody that you're going to play next to Bam, but I think you could explore it in certain matchups. I wouldn't rule Spo from Spo's a mad scientist. He'll do crazy stuff sometimes, but this is a backup center play. This is not a starting front court play. He's big, 6'11". He's a great rebounder. Defensively, He's inconsistent. This is the thing that frustrates every team that's had Thomas Bryant so far. Defensively, can he kick it up a notch in Miami? That's sort of the bet, right? Hey, maybe we can coax them out to this guy to kind of focus and dial the defensive.
Think about the rosters he's been on. I mean, not to cut you off there, but he's been in Washington. He battled through injury there. The Lakers, nobody was going to coach him up there. Denver, Michael Malone, good as he is.
He was with the Lakers after Frank Vogel too, right? If anybody was going to, so Vogel is kind of the guy that would coach you up, especially the center spot. And to your point, the Nuggets, but he gets to Denver midstream. You know what I mean? Like, you're not changing your habits in the middle of a season like that.
Exactly.
So
I think a full training camp in Miami was full, and the coaching staff there, I think they have an opportunity.
And at the minimum, really it's a steal. Like, I actually was a little surprised. I thought he could have gotten a little bit more on the open market. Maybe he could have. Maybe he turned down.
Yeah, he was on my list. He was on my list, and I thought, this is a guy who's probably priced out because he's just so young and still talented. So
Speaking of guys who took less money to come to Miami, Josh Richardson reportedly got bigger offers elsewhere. Surprisingly, took the veteran minimum to come back to Miami. I love this, David. We're going to do a lot more on Josh Richardson throughout this offseason, but just some quick thoughts on this. Obviously, part of the 4-team trade that got Jimmy Butler to Miami. Josh Richardson goes to Philadelphia in that deal, along with some other things. Bounces around the league: Philly, Boston, Dallas, San Antonio, most recently New Orleans. 37%-ish 3-point shooter for his career. A guy who could put the ball on the floor a little bit. 6'6", long wingspan, rangy defender. I love this pickup. To me, this is the kind of thing, and I don't mean to overstate it, but I'm gonna. This is the kind of thing that swings championships. And I think, I'm not saying that Josh Richardson is winning you a championship, but it's that kind of deal. Like, when you're getting that kind of value on a veteran minimum, this reminds me of when the Warriors got Otto Porter a couple of years ago, turning down like $5-6 million deals elsewhere because he wanted a chance to compete for a championship in Golden State and just increase his value around the league. And that's exactly what happened. Then he wins a championship in Golden State on a veteran minimum, plays a huge part of their best lineups, and in the NBA Finals, ends up starting in the NBA Finals. And he goes and signs a $9 million, $8 million deal, whatever, with Toronto. So I think I'll
go a step further. I think this is like Bruce Brown almost, right? It's the same kind of level of potential impact. And
we see what that can do, right?
Yeah. A guy, a high impact player, he comes in on 1 year prove it deal. It's basically a 1+1 with a player option. And you go in there to a system that you're familiar with. And I love the wrinkle reported by Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald that it was a conversation with Eric was saying, come back to the fold. You're a Heat lifer at heart. Josh, the way he's always talked about this organization, they took a chance on him. He's a guy maybe with a little bit of imposter syndrome, himself. Like, for all the talent he had, he never expected to be this good. And Miami took a chance on him. They developed him. All about the apocryphal story at this point of Spo pushing him in that 3-point shooting contest and things of that sort, having to hit a number, what is it, 80? I think it was 80 out of 100, and he couldn't leave the practice floor until he hit that. It was just that kind of build up over time. He's always been appreciative of the opportunity here. And I can't recall exactly who said it. Somebody else reporting that, when he was traded away, that they knew he'd come back at some point. This is his opportunity. Even if it's just for 1 year, it's 1 year with Dame.
It's a player option on the second year, right? It's a 2-year deal with a player option on the second year, minimum, obviously both years.
You play 1 year
with Dame.
I want really high impact player.
Do you think that phone call that Spoelstra had with Josh Richardson, do you think Dame was a part? Do you think Dame came up?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, look, we're probably going to lose a lot of these guys in the backcourt. We've already lost Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. We could even lose Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson. If you come here on the minimum, you're going to have a chance to play potentially with Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo and start for us at 2 guard. Because I'm telling you, Damian Lillard and Josh Richardson, that's a backcourt. Like, Josh Richardson is sort of ideally what you want next to a guy like Damian Lillard. Longer, defensive-minded, could pick up opposing point guards so Dame doesn't have to. Like, not to get ahead of ourselves here, but if you do end up pulling this Damian Lillard trade off, that's what I think they envisioned. I think Miami envisioned exactly this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. I mean, look, you're going to have to include Tyler, whether it's the Portland or a third team or whatever. That Portland's not going to be here. Caleb, whatever his role might be, who knows? He's probably going to be coming off the bench. But you get Josh or Caleb coming off the bench. Either one of them, again, a secondary, tertiary, fourth option on offense, because now you have Dame there. And again, the defensive presence, the helper, he can make plays. Like, he was miscast in his time in Miami. For whatever, if Heat fans don't recall, and maybe it's just new fans. Like, he was forced into a starring role that he was never ready to embrace, and he was waffling between point guard, shooting guard, having to be the primary playmaker and the defender. Like, he was asked to be Jimmy Butler without Jimmy Butler level talent, and that was unfair of Josh. Unfair of the Heat to expect that of Josh, but now he comes in there with a much more specific and limited role. He can thrive in that, especially in the system.
KCP.
Yeah.
Just be KCP. Boom. Yeah. Done. Like, and you could see guys like that. They win championships and they play for a long time. And they make a lot of money. You mentioned the third team. We didn't get to this earlier, and I want to be quick about it. But to me, if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I'm just going to put this out there in terms of 3-team scenarios. Tyler Herro going to Brooklyn for a couple of first-round picks that go back to Portland. That to me is a no-brainer if I'm Brooklyn. I've got Mikal Bridges. I've got Cam Johnson, who I just re-signed. I've got Nick Claxton. I need a scoring guard. And Tyler Herro is perfect for that team. I think, and Tyler Herro in Brooklyn would be awesome. Like, if Tyler Herro is involved in this trade and it ultimately does happen, I'm going to miss Tyler Herro. You know, I am a Tyler Herro apologist. I get accused of it all the time, and it's absolutely true.
I get accused of being a Tyler Herro hater, so it's okay. We're balanced.
We even each other out. That's why we're co-hosts. But I think he would be very exciting in Brooklyn. And if I'm the Nets, I kind of like that. I'm not saying Tyler Herro is better than Damian Lillard, but in terms of what I'm building, I just did the aging superstar thing, trading multiple first-round picks. I know they have up to 11 that they can move, but like it's not a lot of their own picks, right? Like, they need to kind of. I think they're building something real. I think they after the KD, Kyrie, James Harden thing, it kind of makes sense for them. I don't know in other words, what's their appetite to go back into the aging superstar, compressed timeline thing. I don't know that it would be. Go get Tyler Herro, 25 years old, all-star potential, 20-point per game scorer, can take the most shots next to Mikal Bridges, budding superstar Mikal Bridges. Love him. Cam Johnson's solid. $20 million a year is a little heavy, but that's solid. Nick Claxton is one of the best defensive centers in the NBA. Like, that's a good young roster. And if all it costs you is a couple of first-round picks from coming over from Phoenix or wherever, I don't know. That to me is a no-brainer for Brooklyn. I'd rather do that than do the Damian Lillard thing.
You can erase the last couple of seasons of like trying to build that super team with Kyrie and KD and James Harden and Simmons and everything else. And that's another part of the trade, is that maybe Simmons is sent to Portland. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot to break down there, but I think that would be fun. Like, that team as is, with Herro on there, would probably be a top, like a lot of league pass watchability.
I would watch them all the time. Yeah. You know me, I love watching Tyler. I've always liked watching Bridges, and I love watching Claxton. I think Claxton's awesome.
Iron Eagle, that great floor in Brooklyn. There's a lot there. I mean, that's a fun team to watch. So, I mean,
how many bucket hats? I mean, bucket hats in Brooklyn and Tyler Herro. Just perfect.
And, the Miami Heat officially, as we're recording this, signing Josh Richardson. So good for them.
Official deal. Great.
Yep.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Every day. We're going to be back tomorrow with the latest on Damian Lillard, to look at the top remaining free agents available at some point this week when we get some time. We're going to go in depth on what it is that Thomas Bryant, Josh Richardson, all these guys can bring to the Miami Heat, and whoever else they sign. You know where to tune in here. Locked On Heat. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. David, thanks for joining me.
You got it, Wes.